Hello, welcome or welcome back, depending on if you're new here. 2024 is almost over, as crazy as that seems, so I've decided to do a little recap of my absolute favorite art supplies of the year. Not new supplies necessarily, I'm talking what are my go-to, must-use supplies that I found myself reaching for over and over and over again throughout the year. So yeah, let's get right into it. Starting off with paints. This is my Mijello Watercolor palette. This palette has been great. It wasn't expensive, does what it needs to do. I have added a few extra colors by just sticking the pans down, and that has worked great for me. Oh, we've got some travelers here. The majority of my current watercolor palette is Daniel Smith. I will link my 2024 palette below in case you're interested about hearing about my individual choices. I've been avoiding refilling any of the pans because as the year comes to a close, I think about what I might want to switch out of here. So I will be doing that soon. But for now, most of the paints in here are Daniel Smith, aside from M. Graham, Da Vinci, and then I believe there's one Roman Schmal. All great paints, and this has been kind of what I reach for the most. This is the Etchr Perfect Sketchbook. It is 300 GSM, 100% cotton paper, and it is absolutely one of my favorite sketchbooks. I love this paper. It's nice and thick, it handles water really well, and it is a nice cold press where it's not super rough, but it does have a really lovely texture to it. I use this one all the time. If you are familiar with my content at all, you definitely will have seen some of these, especially my travel recaps. So that is this sketchbook. It is nice thick paper, handles water really well. On the pricier side because it's nice paper, but I absolutely love this sketchbook. The next sketchbook that I use all the time is my Etchr Hot Press sketchbook. This is the everyday sketchbook, so it is also 100% cotton, but it is I think 200 GSM instead of 300 GSM, so it's just a little bit thinner, and this is the hot press paper, so the texture is a lot smoother. I love it for pieces where I'm going to be using a lot of ink pen, so the pen just glides a lot more easily on the smoother paper. I don't prefer it for painting. I just prefer cold press paper, but when I'm going to use ink pen, so for all of the monthly challenges, I tend to do those on hot press paper if I'm going to be using ink pen, just so that it glides a little better. So this is the everyday sketchbook, I believe. The last sketchbook is my travel sketchbook right now. This is a Hahnemuhle sketchbook. It is a really nice size. It is also 100% cotton paper, so it handles water pretty well. And this one is cold press, but is a much smoother cold press, if that makes sense. So there's some texture to it, but it's not as much as the Etchr everyday sketchbook would be. And I like it for travel sketchbook work, partially because of that smoother texture. I'm often using my ink pen when I'm out and about for stuff like this, so it just works out pretty well. I like the size too because I like to work very small and quick when I'm out and doing any urban sketching. But this is my travel sketchbook, which I really enjoy. Next is Baohong watercolor paper. It is also 100% cotton. I love the texture of the cold press paper from this brand. It's really great, and I love it for a landscape painting. This is in a block, which means that, this isn't open right now, but a block means that it's attached on all four sides except for just a little space that you can use to pull the paper off the block when you're done using it, so it stays nice and flat while you're working on it and doesn't warp even if you use a lot of water. Blocks are more expensive than regular paper because they have that extra added glue, but I love this paper and I love this size. Next is B paper, and this I use for practice pieces or quick sketch pieces that I am not going to spend a lot of time on. This is also 100% cotton watercolor paper, but it's 200 GSM, so it's definitely not as thick as the Baohong paper. It is fairly smooth, even though it is cold press. It definitely does warp, so it's harder to use a lot of water on this kind of paper, but I'm often using it as a way to test out pieces or make cards, so it doesn't have to be super thick, expensive paper. And this paper is a little cheaper than some of the other 100% cotton watercolor paper is, while still being 100% cotton, which is my preference for sure, because 100% cotton watercolor paper is amazing. Next, we have pencils. So I have been using this Blackwing Pearl pencil for months. I think this is the only one that I've used out of this box so far. I don't do a ton of sketching. I usually am just doing a quick light sketch before a painting, so I am not like a pencil artist for sure, but I love the way that these pencils write, and the eraser's pretty good, although normally I'm using my own eraser. These are expensive, but if you're someone like me, they last literally forever. Again, I've had this pencil for probably 2 years now, and this is as far as it's gotten. These are great, and if you are ever looking for a fancy pencil, would definitely recommend a Blackwing. Next are brushes. I got this super fun wilderness brush from Beam Paints a couple months ago, and it is so fun. First of all, look at it. It looks so cute, and it just makes me so happy to see it in my supplies and bring it out. This is, I think, the only size they have available with this kind of round brush tip, so it is kind of small. When I am working smaller, I prefer a synthetic brush anyway, so that kind of works for me. And if they had it in a larger size, I would totally get that too. But this has been, I think, one of my favorite purchases of this year, just because I love the way it looks and I like the way that it paints. I would definitely recommend these, and if you aren't familiar with Beam Paints, they're a great company out of Canada. They're Indigenous owned, and I love their paints too. Next, we have my go-to travel brush, which is a Princeton Neptune. This is size 8, and for the size that I work with most often when I am painting out and about, this is kind of perfect for basically the whole painting. I don't work too big when I'm urban sketching usually, so this works well and has a pretty good point, and it closes up nice and neat in this little tube for carrying in your carrying case. It has a hole at the end so that if it's still slightly wet when you put it away, it's not going to get moldy and gross. My last brushes here are silver black velvets. These are pretty popular brushes, so they're kind of everywhere, and I do get why. I bought several of these when I first started really investing in my materials around 2021, and they are still going strong despite a ton of brush mileage. They hold a ton of water, they come to a really nice point, and they are very soft, so if you prefer a bit of snap in your brush, these are probably not for you. But if you want a quality brush that will last and works really well, then these are definitely a solid choice. I do really enjoy using them. I will note that these are a mix of synthetic and natural hair, so if you're trying to stay vegan in your art materials, then these are not for you. This is my go-to ink pen. It's Jinhao and it was super cheap. I bought it because I wanted to try out an ink pen and see if I liked it before I thought about investing in a more expensive option, and I don't really see the need to do so because I love this pen. I use it all the time. It is definitely my go-to, and yeah, you know, that's kind of that. The ink that I use with my ink pen so that I can watercolor over it is Noodler's ink in black. This ink is great. I've had no issues with it. It hasn't clogged my ink pen at all. I've refilled it a ton of times now, and I still don't feel like I've even really made a dent in the bottle. It wasn't too expensive. Like, this ink was super worth it for me, and I would definitely recommend. Then we have my travel watercolor cup. This is clearly, it's kind of dirty in the inside. This folds up to basically nothing. It's so easy to put in your kit. It comes with a lid, although I never use the lid. And it holds a good amount of water, but also isn't too big, if that makes sense. And you can kind of do whatever you want with the height of the cup. This was also not expensive. It is just like a pretty solid product that I use literally all the time. And then we have these guys. These binder clips are super cute. I use them to hold my sketchbooks open while I'm painting, and they're great. I love them because they stay pretty secure without leaving a dent in the paper. I just like the way that they look, so I would definitely recommend these. I haven't had a single one break on me, and they hold a good amount of paper if you need them to. And yeah. So now I will move on to digital art, because I do also make a lot of digital art. I don't have a ton of materials that I use for them. I mainly use my iPad. I mean, this is definitely not a cheap material to use. I have tried a tablet that didn't have a screen on it before, but it really didn't work for me. I did not enjoy the experience, and I don't really like drawing in Photoshop. But I do really enjoy the experience of drawing on my iPad. I often use Procreate. If you're not familiar, it's a non-subscription model drawing program. It gives you a ton of brushes, and it gives you the option to change anything you want about the brushes. It does have its drawbacks, mainly the layer limits, and also the thing that I hate about it most is the loss of quality when copying and pasting layers. I feel like there's way less loss of quality when working in Photoshop. I don't know about any other programs because these are really the only ones that I've used, but there's a ton of stuff that you can do in Procreate, and I really love the experience of working in it. I use it for anything from regular prints, making stickers. I'll do patterns. I kind of do whatever I want in here, and it's great. The other product that I'm using basically always when I am working digitally is this artist glove. Basically, it just covers the part of your hand that'll be resting on the screen, because I do have the habit of accidentally causing things to draw by touching my hand on the screen while I'm drawing instead of keeping my hand elevated. So I definitely like having this artist glove because it means that it doesn't matter what I do on the screen, it's not gonna mess anything up. They're super cheap and really easy to get. I'll link this one below along with everything else, but yeah, I would definitely recommend these if you ever find yourself getting frustrated that you're accidentally pressing buttons or erasing things or drawing when drawing digitally. Alright, so that's it for my go-to supplies for 2024. I'll link them all below in case you're interested in checking any of them out. Let me know in the comments what your top supplies are. What papers are you using? What paint brands? What are your go-to brushes? everyone's process is different, and that's part of what's great about making art. So I'd love to hear what you're reaching for, and if you've had any drastically different experiences with the supplies I mentioned, I'd love to hear that too. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to like and consider subscribing if you'd like to see more from me, and have a great end to your 2024, and I will see you in the next one.